It was a feeling started long ago, one bleak and wintry morn, when the call went out for volunteers and a nation being born. No sunshine patriot speeches, no summer soldier song, for the special ones who paid the price to keep the country strong.
When we were needed, we were there. We were there when we were needed, we were there.
No, it wasn't always easy, wasn't always fair, but when freedom called, we answered, we were there. If you want to find out who we are, just ask us where we've been. From the frozen fields of Valley Forge to a trail called Ho Chi Minh, through the glory and the sacrifice, we do our job each day. We're citizens and soldiers, an army all the way.
Mission Solutions Summit that reflects the optimism and really the vision of opportunity that we have today as we transition from an army at war and prepare for future conflicts that may be forthcoming.
No, it wasn't always easy, wasn't always fair, but when freedom called, we answered, we were there. No, it wasn't always easy, wasn't always fair, but when freedom called, we answered, we were
Ladies and gentlemen, the 31st President of the Army Aviation Association of America, Brigadier General Retired Howard W. Yellen.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be back in Nashville for the 2015 Mission Solutions Summit. You know, in no conflict since Vietnam has the power and importance of Army aviation been so realized as in Afghanistan and Iraq, where Army aviation has allowed ground commanders to escape the tyranny of terrain by conducting operations in environments ranging from unforgiving deserts to the summits of extraordinary mountains in every possible climate, and all done in the darkest of nights. And to add to an already incredible capability, Army unmanned aerial systems burst onto the scene over the last 14 years and have become an indispensable asset in aviation manned and unmanned teaming. Almost no mission is conceived, planned, and launched by the ground force commander without supporting Army aviation assets. Army aviation is an integral part of the team, trusted, trained, and ready. Army aviation touches every mission, whether it's in the continuing Southwest Asia fight, standing guard in the Republic of Korea, or contributing to humanitarian efforts, like its recent support in the unforeseen fight against Ebola in West Africa. But that's today. What about tomorrow? The value of such versatile, flexible, and adaptable capabilities will no doubt be called upon again in support of the ground commander. But what kind of aviation force will deploy in support of those commanders? Will we still be trained? Will we still be ready and technologically superior? The end of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, combined with mounting pressure on the Pentagon's budget, is forcing the military to make steep reductions in the size of the force. The impact of such reductions in Army aviation is painfully evident just up the road at Fort Campbell. The 159th prepares to case its colors at the end of this year. For the first time since the division's return from Vietnam, the addition of the 159th allowed it to be properly resourced with sufficient Army aviation in order to be a real air assault division. But with the closure of the 159th, what will distinguish the 101st from any other light division? One can only wonder if it will be renamed in order to remove its air assault designation. The Army's budget request illustrates a significant downward spiral from the 2010 budget onward. Unfortunately, as ill-advised as the dilution of aviation force structure may appear, it is the clear result of budgetary pressures and not mission analysis, and is placed on the military by Congress. As we all know, the capability of Army aviation on the battlefield goes well beyond what it costs to sustain it. But the problem remains money. And if Army aviation is to be prepared for any mission, anywhere, it will need the best soldiers, the best training, and the best equipment, and that takes money. Our current aviation leaders have taken the prudent action of being proactive in reshaping the branch, rather than leaving it up to the programmers in the Pentagon or the professional staffers on Capitol Hill. Troops are asking about the loss of a true scout, the restructure of our attack aircraft, and the impacts of ARI on the National Guard. I submit that in the current Washington, D.C. environment, without these actions, our branch would have been far worse off. In preparation for future wars of decision, planning and resourcing is decided decades well in advance. The big question that we as a nation must ask is, what capabilities do you want from our Army and by extension our aviation force? And with that in mind, why are those resources that provide for that desired capability being eliminated? And the issue is far beyond just force structure reduction. It's the reduction in resources to train and maintain. Future op tempo for flying hours will be at an all-time low, regardless of component. There is no substitute for demanding and realistic training. Leader development and individual or crew training is the foundation for everything our Army accomplishes. Additionally, without sufficient resources, aviation sustainment will suffer as resources to reset, repair, and/or replace will diminish, and we'll see a drawdown or reduction in readiness. Former Chief of Staff of the Army, Gordon Sullivan, used the phrase "no more Task Force Smiths" during the drawdown following the Cold War. It was a catchphrase he used to express a desire to avoid the perceived mistakes that led to the unit's defeat during the Korean War. In June of 1999, an email surfaced. It was titled "Task Force Hawk: Lessons Learned in Albania," and it received widespread dissemination and interest. It cited 9 issues, ranging from lack of aviator experience to lack of aircraft survivability equipment to an unbalanced aviation force structure. We can't afford to fall back into those conditions. And perhaps the new catchphrase ought to be "no more Task Force Hawks," to ensure Army aviation does not regress to the conditions we faced in the late 90s. Capability gaps, such as inability to operate 24/7 in all visual conditions, increasing threats to survivability, and increasing requirements from a smaller force, they exist today, and they open up a window for vulnerability in the future. The requirements are daunting, as many of you well know. Operation Spartan Shield, Resolute Support, rotations to Korea, AFRICOM, and in the future, EUCOM are just a few of the requirements that stretch Army aviation. If a future war of decision should come, and many believe it will, now is the time to address the aviation capability we need as an Army to ensure Army aviation remains trained and ready. Aviation force structure and unit competency cannot be created after the emergency occurs. We know that air crew, ground crew, and aviation employment skills are extraordinarily perishable. It takes months, even years, to develop. Strengthening Army aviation and investing for a successful future reaffirms to our soldiers and the nation that only the best equipment and capabilities put into the hands of the finest aviation soldiers in the world will be brought to bear for that next mission wherever and whenever called upon. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Quad A Mission Solutions Summit. Beginning last evening and for the next 2 days, you'll have the opportunity to network, both in the professional sessions and on the exhibit floor. You'll have the opportunity to hear senior Army and aviation leaders and discuss many of those issues I've just mentioned. We'll take the time to recognize personnel and units who have excelled in 2014. You'll be able to have your voice heard as we conduct a variety of deep dive sessions and meet and talk with today's Army Aviation senior leaders as they take center stage in the Technology Learning Center. And lastly, we're proud to support a variety of worthwhile efforts such as our Scholarship Foundation. This is the one time of the year that our total Army Aviation community, active duty, reserve, National Guard, Army civilians, retired, and industry partners gather to pursue excellence, ensure readiness for the future, and permit us to make a difference for our aviation soldiers and families. Quad A trusts that this will be a rewarding summit for our attendees. For many, 9/11 is a distant memory. For those who have worn and continue to wear the uniform, it's a recognizable fact that many of our soldiers are still in harm's way today. Army Aviation is not immune to the reality of that environment. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and join me in a tribute to our Army Aviation soldiers who have made the ultimate sacrifice since our last annual meeting in May 2014. Please join me in a round of applause for Mr. Joe Ausfall for providing that stirring bagpipe music. Please be seated. We thank all of the senior leadership from the Department of Defense, Army, and Army Aviation for their effort to make this significant event happen, and to those who have taken the time to be here. We also want to thank the allies from many different countries who are here with us for these next 2 days. Let me also recognize those who were there at the beginning of Army Aviation on the 6th of June, 1942. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to recognize the originals, otherwise known as the Cub Club, and I believe some of them are, I'd like you to stand to be recognized. Yeah. And finally, and most important, I would ask all of those in uniform, active, Guard, and Reserve, and your family members who are here with you to please stand and be recognized. All the troops in the back. Thank you all for your service, your dedication, and your commitment to excellence. As in the past years, we'll be making a donation to the Army Aviation Scholarship Foundation on behalf of all our speakers as a thank you and in recognition of their participation.